Hi, it's Ray from ProShaper Workshop. I'm your nightly host. We're working on the Talbot-Lago tonight. Why aren't we working on the Healy? Because we have a goal for this. We don't have a goal for the Healy. Everybody's going to go, oh, he's going to abandon the Healy. No, we're going back to the Healy. But this is a super cool project. So we've been having Jill's new to the process. He's using my flexible shape pattern system to copy this right front fender, and this is the first piece, and we're going to make this piece out of 063 aluminum right now. So the goal is within 2 weeks to have this right front fender done, and we're going to record the whole thing. We'll put it up on YouTube. So this is interesting. I told Jill's where to make the brakes. This is where it came off of. And now the way this system works is it ensures symmetry. If you turn it inside out, you get a reverse piece. So this will allow us to make the other side. Now it also has all these gauges. These are all gauge positions here. And there's a lot of information on this. I'll kind of explain a little bit some of the information. But earlier, Jill's and I put this on this side. And this was a 1-year process to make all these surfaces. And George down in Florida, who did this job like 25 years ago, did a pretty good job, but he didn't do it perfectly. And the flexible shape pattern tells you that he didn't do it perfectly. One, it fits pretty good. The wheel opening is fitting. This is all fitting pretty good, but watch this little detail. Right here, there's movement, meaning this side is a little less full than the other side. So that would be a little bit of asymmetry. Nothing your eye could pick up, but we're going to fix that. We're going to try to make it as symmetrical as possible. Both the left and right should be within a 1/16 of an inch or so when we're done. So we're making this side tonight, and these gauges, I've had a couple of requests again to show the gauges. Now we've showed making the gauges several times, but what the gauges are an external buck, not internal, external. External information, surface information, is generally always available to you. So we used to make these by taking a strip of 18 gauge steel or 19 gauge steel, 5/8 thick, 5/8 wide, 19 gauge thick, and we'd put them in the shrinker stretcher, and we would bend them with using the shrinker, doing all this kick shrinking. And they made really nice ones. But what happens, you have to write all this information so you know what the gauge fits. And there's not much information potential to write on those little narrow gauges. So I've switched to using cardboard instead. So how do you make these gauges? So let's do that. I'll take this off and I'll make a gauge for just this little spot right here. Now, you want to, what the gauges do is give you the correct arrangement. This flexible shape pattern gives you the correct area value. The area value is where it differs from the original flat panel that this was made out of. This was handmade in Paris in 1937. Started with a flat piece of metal, and then they shrink it and they stretch it. In this case, it could be all stretched. And it changes the area value, meaning the surface area increases if it stretches, it decreases if it shrinks, and it changes the value from what it was to a new value. But just like this flexible shape pattern, you can put this in an infinite number of arrangements. I call this an arrangement. So this is an arrangement, that's an arrangement, this is an arrangement. Infinite number of arrangements, but there's only one arrangement that we want. That is the 1937 Fagoni designed Talbot-Lago. And that arrangement is right here with these curves. So we lay out the curves on the flexible shape pattern on the first layer. Now they're all hermetically sealed in there so that we don't wipe them out with acid on our fingers. And we have index marks for each one of those gauges. So we're not going to show all the details of that right now, but we're going to make a gauge. And here's raw material here. And we'll just make a sample gauge right here. So now everybody wants to get some kind of curve finder, those little pin things, and I've got those. I hate them. You got to trust your own instincts. So you put this like this, so you've got an equal division. What we see here is about 1.25 inches of gap right here. So in order for that to fit on there, we're going to have to go up 1.25 inches. Now all we need to do is, it ends here, that's going to end here. Now we just connect the dots basically. So we go like that. So that's our first line. It's a no-brainer. Anybody can do it. You got to buy one of these cordless shears, cordless scissors. Cordless shears are good too. This one's a little screwed up. You got to push 2 buttons at once. The other ones you don't have to. Cut through the cardboard like nothing. All right, you see that? Now usually I get closer than that. So I had 1.25 inches rock, and now I have about 1/4 inch rock. So I need to take out another 1/4 here. So I'm going to go like this. And there's my new line. Remember, each one of these shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes to make. Alright, so that's pretty close now. Now you got it in shooting distance here, really close. 80 sandpaper. So you find out where it's hitting. Where it's hitting, you have to sand it. And we're going to put it back in the same location. We overshot our index marks here a little bit. So we're gonna hit in here. There's a gap here, and there's a hitting over here. So we're gonna sand it in here, and it'll be a few minutes of sanding on each one. Take all the fuzz off, make a nice clean gauge. So you're getting closer there. Again, more sanding, but we don't have to show the whole thing on camera. The idea I've already expressed. We just got to make sure you sand that spot, and that will go hugging right up to it. You want to get it within a 32nd of an inch. Then what I do is, after you get it perfect, then you take and mark it right at the edge, there, and we'll cut that off. So then I usually put 1 index mark. You don't want it in the center. You put it on the off the center, so that you know that it orients that way. So you pick it up, you got an index mark here, you got an index mark here. You know it doesn't go that way, it goes this way, even though it might be symmetrical. So once you get the index mark, you continue to put that on the index mark, and you keep sanding it until it fits perfect. Now the backbone should be about that big or so. The reason for that is you're going to put the panel number. You're only supposed to have 1 panel number. Jill's went a little crazy, put the panel number every segment here. This piece is going from here to here. It only needs 1. Panel number, I put with a circle around it. Number 2, I'd put the index mark here. I'd cross over on the other side with it. Have the index mark and the information on all sides, too. So you have to standardize all this. and this will be a gauge number. So this might be gauge 1, this might be gauge 2. So generally I use different color pens too. Usually use a black number for the gauge. I put an underscore to differentiate the gauge number, and then the orientation of that gauge goes to that line right there. Information on both sides. So then, if you lose this gauge and a month later you find it, you go, what is it for? So what I do is I put a little storyboard in each one of these, a little square, and we put a little label on it, Talbot-Lago. You can put it on both sides too. So it's really important that you get all this little detail, and the flexible shape pattern has tons of detail. Not only does it do the area value for you, it indexes where all the gauges are going to be. Those are your profile gauges, which have a unique identity to it. You have to have the gauges. And then this is the weld line. That's with a superfine pen. It lines up with the weld line on the other side. So when I make this part, the weld line lines up right there. When I make this part, the weld line lines up right here. You make them long and straight, so when they're welded together, and if you're screwed up and you notice that the line's going together like that, you know there's something wrong. That's supposed to be a dead straight line. And the longer you make it, the better it is. So there's index marks on every gauges. There's the perimeter value. There's the welding line. It tells you what the flexible shape pattern, that's the little story there. It's the flexible shape pattern number circled. And then we write on here how much extra metal we need when we cut the blank. So I add a 1/2 inch because that's a weld. 1/2 inch over here. And this is going to have this one has a flange on it, but we're going to put a wired edge on it. We've got 3/4 inch extra there. And that'll give, and when I do cut the metal, I'll actually even cut a little bit more than that. That'll be my initial cut. Then I have a mid-range cut after you start forming the panel. And then I'll do the final cut when I'm ready to weld one together. And then when you weld these together, you can weld this one and this one together, get that seam, and then make this one and this one, and then you weld this assembly to this assembly and weld it together. Or you can weld this one and this one together, this one and this one together, and then weld the seam over here. Now you never want to weld on the peak. That's why we put the weld seam over here an inch away. The reason for that is a lot of times we'll run the planishing hammer on the welds to stretch them back out again and smooth them out. And being 1 inch away, the dies are generally 1.5 inches in diameter, so we're out of range to bug that up. We don't want to bug up that nice line, which will be tipped on there. Now, when we make this panel, that line or that tip it screws up our flexible shape pattern. Now we've got a dotted line on that, so I'm going to take a pair of scissors and carefully cut that off, which will get reattached later. So I'm carefully going to cut that off right along the dotted line. That's where the peak is going to be located. And all these lines get holes punched in them. And with those holes and the translucence of this tape, that allows you to transfer all the information to the other side. Now I've went through a lot of different tapes, and I've settled in on this tape. This is the best tape for the job. I use 1 inch, and we sell it on our website, ProShaper.com. Very reasonable. Now we sell a deluxe tape kit with the blue vinyl tape. And a lot of times people figure, oh, you don't need the blue vinyl tape. You need the blue vinyl tape to do cutting and any expert or accurate line generation. For cutting and for snapping these profile gauges, use the blue tape constantly. So now that doesn't have the information on it, so that was a mistake. See, we don't know what this is now. So that I should have told Jills to put Talbot-Lago on there and panel number 1. So that's going to have to be retro done. And what we can do is we can write on this and then take clear plastic tape, Scotch tape, and that will hermetically seal that information in. This is lined up here with the index mark, so that'll index right on there like that. So we'll do that right after, but now we've got this as our first panel, and let's see if we can make this panel tonight. I don't know if I'll get it totally finished, but you'll see the whole process. We'll make it out of 063 3003 aluminum. And this is the Chinese source, really difficult to work metal, but I really like it because it makes a really good panel. All right, so we have a blank of 064, 063, 3003. We push the flexible shape pattern down like this. Now this is my first gross cut, so I'm gonna cut it much longer than I really need it. You squash this down and you make sure that you got enough, because this is going to be going like this, and we're going to do some shrinking on this. There's our piece. So you can see here, the general rule of thumb I go by is if you take a straight edge and put it across here, and you have 3 inches that was straight like that, and you measure 3 inches down, you have to shrink it. Otherwise you're asking the metal to do too much. You're going to have to stretch too much. So we're going to have to do a little bit of shrinkage over in this corner over here, right in here. So first I got to cut it all out. I'll shear this off first, right like this. And somebody might have been asking about how I got the blue finger. I was cutting some cardboard and I put my hand like this and I caught it underneath this guard right here as I pulled down. It wouldn't have cut my finger off, but it really hurt it because it would just compress the springs. So it's coming along really well. I should lose it in another week or so. First one I've lost in a long, long time. I usually hate that right there, so let's see if I can cheat that up a little bit. Yeah, it looks like I can. I hate having that notch on the corner there, even though I might not even need it, but I'm going to move that in just a little bit so I don't have that notch. The funny thing is I made XK Jaguar parts for years and years and years, and the XK 120, 140, and 150 front fenders actually has the same exact shape, except it doesn't have this inflection point right here where it comes down. It's all rounded right there. So I got plenty of material, and now I got to cut that out. I'll use the cordless shears. When you're cutting aluminum, it's really sticky. Little WD-40 on there. That piece is into the scrap pile. If you don't have one of these cordless shears, you want one. We have these listed in our Amazon store. The Amazon store address is at every one of our videos, right there. So, we have our blank, and now we got to gross shape it to get about 70% of the desired stretch and shrink that we want. So we'll bring it over here. All right, so we're going to use what I call my shrinking facilitator. I don't call them stumps because a stump is a stump. It's made from a real tree. This is made from tree material. It's construction lumber. Go to any lumber yard, get some 2x8s. I have a video. We got the link on our website of how to make this, so you can figure it out yourself. It's not that difficult. It's just a perimeter of 2x8s and then a bunch of modules, and you pre-cut them in the bandsaw, so you don't have to do all that grinding and cutting out with a chainsaw and everything. Once you get them in there, you just grind a little bit. And the first ones I made, I didn't put the rubber on. This is like 10 years ago when I came up with this idea. The first ones I made, no rubber, and they would break. I found this rubber. This is Epdm, which is a standard, it's an acronym for something. I don't know exactly. You have to look it up on Google or something. It's a standard rubber used in roofing worldwide. It's a 1/16 of an inch thick, and it comes with a really aggressive sticky on the back, and it'll take any shape whatsoever. You can make these any shape. This is a nice general shape here. I call it the half of a clamshell. So this will allow you to shrink and stretch, and this is super stiff. If we annealed it, we'll shrink and stretch a lot easier, and maybe we might do that. We'll see. We'll see what kind of results we get. I'm probably going to have to use some muffs. I'm going to get some muffs. Now, in order to move this metal, you need a good mallet. I've been making these for about 10 years or so. So these got a lot of mass to them. Plastic Delrin heads. Delrin, it's the best plastic you can get. And a steel hammer handle. We make them also with wood handles, and we make them with fiberglass also. I like personally the steel ones the best. All right, so we want right here, we want spontaneous gathers to happen here, which we'll be able to shrink. So we're putting it like that. We'll hit it with this end. And there's our gather. See how that rubber holds it? Now let's see if we get another one over here. There it is. Now we corral it up. So there's a couple hammer blows, and we have that much rise in the panel. We've probably reduced the amount of rise that we need by half already. So let's put some more in it. We'll put another one right here. There we got two. Now, we put this on here. Look at that. We hardly get any gap there at all. We're down to about 3/4 of an inch. Now, some of this will stretch out. Now, my back does kill me when using this, so I usually sit down. Eric's got my my throne chair. So I've been using this end. This is the medium end. Now I'm going to use this at the low end. Low crown. And you'll see this will spontaneously gather again. And we take some more shrink. We don't want the shrinks over there. We want them all over here. Now, This is where most of the curve is. Where most of the curve is, that's where all the area change has to happen. The area change goes from what the flat sheet was to shrunk along this edge to stretch inboard here. This has a very small curve to it, and most of that will just bend over, but there'll be a little bit of stretching in there, that's all. So we'll just stretch that out. And a lot of car panels can be made with this tools. That's it. A good shrinking facilitator, not a stump with a little small depression, it's only this big, will only shrink in about this much. This will shrink in 4, 5, 6, 8 inches. And that's what you have to do. So you need the right shrinking facilitator to do the job. It allows you to shrink and stretch and get to the shape really rapid. And we're talking inexpensive. Doesn't cost more than a couple $100 to make the shrinking facilitator. And I think we get $269 for the mallets. I see a lot of people, they think the only way you can shrink is with a thumbnail die, and then they buy a Pullmax for $5,000 and get a thumbnail die so they can shrink. Doesn't make any sense. Now, when you hit this, you want to make sure that you hit square with the metal. You don't want to hit at an angle like that, then you'll make an eyebrow and it's a stress point on the metal. So we're going to pop out the center a little bit. And we don't have to get to the full developed state by just hitting it on the shrinking facilitator. We can do this twice or 3 times. A little bit at a time. The metal likes it if you go up in stages rather than all at once. That was a little gather that happened there. Knock these down. Bring that around. And you can pace yourself if you get winded or whatever. You just hit it, take a little rest, and you're not hitting it with your body. You're not doing this. That's going to wear you out and you'll be sweating in about 2 minutes. You lift the mallet up and then you accelerate it down. And you're guiding it. This is really stiff stuff. I first hated this stuff, but now I actually love it because it makes a really good panel. I had some conversations with a couple of my friends in England, and they were saying that a lot of their metal is really, really soft. And they worry about being too soft sometimes. That's not the case with this stuff. So that popped up spontaneously, so we'll take advantage of that. So now, we'll stretch this back out this way. We'll arrange it. It's a little low right there probably, so we'll probably hit that a little bit more. But now you can see just a little bit here. It's pretty good. I'll pop that up. See how it's kind of flat right there? So I'll pop that up some more. So everything I've done so far is very easy to do. Anybody can do it. The skill comes in is knowing where to hammer. Well, this tells you where to hammer exactly. Where it's got the most gap, that's where you got to shrink and stretch the most. Now you don't want to stretch it too much because you'll thin it out. So we shrink it. We're shrinking it in this zone right here. That shrinks up and allows that corner to form up, pops this up. And then we watch it. We got a flat spot still there. We got to bring that up. Now we could do this on a beater bag, and oftentimes I do. The problem with the beater bag is you won't get these spontaneous gathers and you can't take advantage of them. So this gives you the double benefit of stretching and shrinking simultaneously. Plus, you get the added bonus, no extra charge. This edge keeps shrinking. As you hit right here, these spontaneously gather. It's one of the miracles of the metal shaping. It's just a really cool little phenomenon. You can watch these, how they'll gather, and we can shrink them some more. Now we don't want to shrink these, so these over here don't need shrinking. So we just hit those down flat. I did get a little bit of shrink there, but that'll be all right. It won't hurt anything. So what we're doing is we're inducing a shrink-stretch ratio into this panel. The ratio ideally should be somewhere between 50-50, 50 shrink, 50 stretch, or 60 shrink, 40 stretch, or 60 stretch, 40 shrink. Somewhere in there is okay. See how that's popping up nicely? It's all about placement. We want air underneath this in order to get this action to happen. So how would you do this with a stupid little hole this big in one of those so-called stumps? You see a lot of people, they have these stumps there this big. You can't, it doesn't work. You can't get this kind of shape this rapidly. This is a 10 or 15 minute job if I'm not talking about it. And these skill sets are nothing new. The Egyptians knew how to do this stuff, except they did it with gold and silver. They didn't have a shrinking facilitator. They probably used a stump, but they were making much smaller items. They weren't making Talbot-Lago fenders. All right, that should be good enough. We'll take that, put that in the wheel. We'll wheel that all smooth, and then we'll have one more go round. All right, extra points if anybody picked it up. I made an error. Anybody? Remember we cut off the extra inch over here? That needed to be incorporated in here. But I added all that extra when I made the blank. So by the time I get this wheeled out, it's going to stretch a little bit. And I do have the extra material, so I should be good. But that could have been a disaster. When you're making videos, you're not necessarily doing your best work because you're thinking about what the video is going to be about. So now we're going to just wheel this out, loosen up this. And now this is going to be a no-brainer, just knocking this all down. Now I got my workhorse wheel in here, which is pretty flat. Just going to crunch this down. I might move to my medium crown wheel. When you pull through these, while you pull it towards you, it has the momentum to knock those gathers down. Starts to get knocked down, you can tighten it up a little bit. And when the English wheel is crunching those down, it's actually pushing the metal together. So the English wheel can shrink a tiny little bit when it forces that metal into itself when you're coming through. But it's not a way you shrink though. Just a byproduct of smoothing it out. So oftentimes my students will cut the metal really short. And I tell them, don't do that. Always leave a little extra. Now you don't want to go excessively extra because then you use a lot of extra material. But having that little extra can bail you out of a little mistake like that I just made. I got plenty of material there. So right now, I'm not doing anything that's, tapping into all my years of experience. All I'm doing is what I call spreading the loam or spreading the paint with a paintbrush. I'm just making sure I don't have a bunch of terrible surface condition. So I'm looking for the bad surface and smoothing it out. It's pretty simple. All those little, you can hear them too. That's the little spontaneous gathers that popped on the edge. Get that nose piece now. Pull that through there. All right, so I got it pretty smoothed out. But now what I want to do is I got to raise this area a little bit more. I don't want to do any shrinking now. But if I do shrinking, I'm going to lose some of my material there because it just disappears. It forces into itself. And I might be short on that edge. So I'm going to stretch this to finish this panel off. And these are all the hammer marks where the metal got a little disturbed from the beating on the hammer. And as we wheel this with higher pressure, it'll all cold forge together. This will turn just like chrome plate in a matter of minutes now. And it'll have the nice shape. So we're going to change the wheel out. This one, I have this little rack and pinion system. Pop the wheel out. Now we'll wheel it for about 5 minutes. All right, we got the new wheel in there, and let's wheel her up. This has about 1/4 of an inch or 5/16 contact area. You get a pretty smooth panel out of it, even though it's a pretty narrow contact area. I know that it needs a lot over in here, so I'm going to concentrate a little bit in here first, and then I'll catch this end down here. Yeah, currently I am rolling this in arrangement. Oftentimes I'll roll the panel out of arrangement.
What are the benefits of rolling it out of arrangement?
You would roll it out of arrangement if you wanted to, this is in arrangement, it's all puffy, and you need that higher crown wheel. But if you take it out of arrangement, see that? It's a really low crown. So you can use a low crown wheel, you get a better finish. We might do that. We'll see what kind of finish we get. Now the English would use a tracking system and a methodical tracking system to do that. I generally don't do that method. I use it a little bit, but I'm reading the panel as I work it. Plus I have the flexible shape pad. If I had a buck, it would only start to be able to be fit onto the buck at this point. And I'm in the medium to heavy pressure range. There's good resistance when I'm pushing through here, and it's moving the metal pretty quickly. And this is no different than, it's sort of like a rolling ball peen hammer. That's what I'm doing. A ball peen hammer, when you swing like this and hit a piece of metal with it, you're putting thousands of pounds of force into that metal. This has a small contact area exactly like a ball peen hammer, except it isn't single hit. It's a rolling contact. All right, let's see what we got now.
Let's see what we have. You're
Yeah.
English teacher, right?
I know. Let's see what we have. All right, we got about 1/2 inch to 3/4. We got plenty of material. If I bring this down like this, I got my inch margin there, no problem. So we're looking good, and it's going to grow a little bit as we continue to form this. So, more material right in here. Now I could hit it again, but let's try just wheeling it. And if we were doing it out of steel, it would be the same deal. The steel would shine up just like the aluminum, it would look just like chrome plate. The steel moves a little bit slower than the aluminum, but pretty much they're the same. It's not a big giant difference. The aluminum's a little tricky to weld, but if you watch some of my welding, if you use the right technique, it's actually pretty easy to TIG weld it. Gas welding, it takes a little while to learn proper. We'll be TIG welding this. All right, now these gloves will shed, so you got to be very careful. I saw a little bit of marking on the panel. The leather flecks come off of the gloves, so I can make sure I don't have any debris on the wheel. It'll print on there. There's a couple little marks here. So now we're getting really close down here. Here we still have about a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to put this about right here. And, well, maybe I will hit that out a little bit more. So, we'll use the beater bag now. So I'm going to put some homes on here. The homes mean I'm going to go back to this position. I got my margin that I need over there. Move that down a little bit. I'm going to put these corner marks in. And this is my tip down line, approximately there. So I'm going to hammer this out a little bit. We'll do this right on the beater bag right here. And we won't have to wheel it so much. So this is what I call elastic stretching, or plastic stretching. Elastic implies that it comes back, but it's not, it's plastic. Maybe we can call it clay stretching. You kind of aim for the spots you haven't hit. Let's see what that did. When you hit it like that, it changes the arrangement as well. And the flexible shape pattern can read it no matter what. So that's getting pretty close. You need a little bit more there and a bunch more right in here. So let's hit that front nose a little bit more right in here. We'll switch to this end of the hammer. You never want to use a really sharp end unless you absolutely have to. If you use a sharp end like this, it'll do damage to the metal. You can use a sharp end, but you have to hit it really easy and let them add up rather than wailing on it. This you can hit it a little harder. Now I'm choking up on the handle here because I don't need that much force. I'm letting them accumulate. So the biggest question is all my students say, where do I hit it? I don't know where to hit it. This is the boss. Tells you where to hit it. You index it. There's where you got to hit it, where the gap is. There's hardly any gap over here. It's right here. So there's the little swath I'm going to concentrate on. Right there. You don't get that information from a buck. Everybody makes these wood station bucks. Wood station bucks do not tell that story to you. This tells the story. I would never, ever, ever make a wood station buck. We just made some wire forms for architectural process. So much better. Now that's original design. You have to have a wire form to do that. Let's see what our progress is. Got to go back to the same marks. We had a good strong 1/2 inch. Now we're down to about 3/8 or so. So we'll continue on. Move it a little more. Everybody runs over to the kick shrinker and shrinks this edge. Well, if I wanted to shrink the edge, I'd just gather it up in my gathering tool and shrink it. I don't use a kick shrinker at all to shrink the edges unless that's the only way you can do it. In the case of tipping this, to get that 1-inch margin that goes over at the angle, then I will use a kick shrinker. See, it's changing the arrangement. Every time you hit it, the hammer blow causes the arrangement to change. And if you did have some kind of buck, a wire form or a wood buck, you couldn't put it on the buck because the buck only accepts one arrangement, the finish arrangement. This allows you to work the part out of arrangement. That's the beauty of a flexible shape pattern. We're out of arrangement, we still got that little spot. We got to pop that up some more. If you can make this panel, you can make the other panels of the fender. Then the skill sets are fitting them all together and welding them. This is the essence of coach building, is making small panels like this and welding them together to make whole panels. When you're doing restoration, I ask my students when they come in, who took the class because they want to do restoration? Who took the class because they want to do coach building? Well, a lot of the guys that do restoration, they don't do aluminum. They want to do steel because the car that they're working on is steel. And what they don't realize is they can actually make the car of their dreams very easily if they just do it. You got to do it. So any car is possible. And the skill sets are the same, whether you're making a cab corner for a 63 Chevy pickup or making this front fender section for a 37 Talbot-Lago, it's the same exact skill sets. If you're going to spend 2,000 hours on a project, it's a smart business to do a project that's going to have some value at the end of it. What I try to do is instill confidence that anybody can learn these skill sets, and you don't need a ton of expensive tools. You don't have to spend $100,000 on tools. A decent English wheel, a beater bag, a shrinking facilitator, a good mallet, and you can make just about anything. A welding setup. You want a gas? Gas welding is pretty inexpensive. Today, TIG welding is well within the range of everybody because they used to be an expensive piece, but not anymore. now we're getting down to 1/8 of an inch or less. We got a little bit more over here, so I'll concentrate over there, and there's actually more on the backside now. So I'll hit that backside a little. You watch the surface. If you see a high on this side, that's a low on the other side. So you just sculpt it with the hammer. What if you do it too much? Not a problem. Metal is clay. We can solve that problem. If you go up in stages, you won't make a really bad error. You only make a really small error. Small errors are very easily fixed. Metal shaping and coach building is a super forgiving craft. All right, let's wheel this out now. This end doesn't get much attention, so you have to turn it 90 degrees and get that end a little bit. This whole end I'm going to do with the other wheel a little bit later on.
Crunch. On your finger.
What?
Now, are you pulling down a little?
Yeah.
While you're doing that?
Yeah. Yeah, I want to bring that edge down, so I pull down a little bit. What? Now, we haven't forgot about the 10-day apprenticeship contest either. Next week, maybe we'll announce 4 more winners. That'd be 8 winners in total so far. So anybody that submitted an entry, you haven't lost. You might be winners. I'm still just gross shaping here, just getting the gross shape in, and then I got to do the detail work. Let's see what the flexible shape pattern tells us now. So, put that on there. Look at that. Is that sweet? This front section is pretty much where it needs to be. A little loose right there. The back section needs a bunch more right in here. So let me pop that up there with the wheel. We'll give it a little attention. You want to take the dust off. There's plaster dust on the flexible shape pad, and you want to make sure you get that all off before you put it back in the wheel. Now I have high pressure. With high pressure, you don't get a really smooth finish. You still got wheel marks. If I lower the pressure, I'll get a lot nicer finish. You can see that chrome plate starting to pop on it really nice. Now we lost probably, we could lose as much as 10/1000ths of an inch of thickness here. We gain some here, we lose some here. But there's plenty of dent resistance. That didn't weaken it any stretch. We could have done more shrinking, but I just opted to do more stretching. Now we'll pop this a little bit. Right in here. Now after we got it to this stage, this is where now you would be able to fit it on the Love wood bucks. Everybody wants a wood buck. This is where you would now be able to actually fit it on. Before that, there's no way. It was so out of arrangement as you're working it and so underdeveloped, it wouldn't fit on the wood buck. Even in wire form, it won't fit. Till you get the shape like 90% developed, you're not going to get it on.
With the wire form, it'd be easier to see from the backside.
Yeah. The wire form, as Eric just mentioned, would allow you to observe how you're fitting. It's very easy to clamp to. This is actually going to be a sink. So this needs to be all shrunk down, and you'll be able to see how that fits. We're getting really close now, a little bit up in here. There's a little swath right here. It's got the most, always go for your spot that has the most gap. Let's see what that did. Put it on our homes. Okay, still a little bit over in here, and still a little bit right in here. So here and here. Tells you exactly where you have to go. A lot of my students pick this up in 4 days, the 4-day class. Some of them don't, but a lot of them do. So now we get to a point where we wheel, we check, we wheel, we check, we wheel, we check. We're getting close. Now these bulbous shapes are generally attributed to 1930s design that spilled into the 50s as well. When you get into the 60s on automotive design, you get a lot of flat surfaces, or actually rolling surfaces with hard lines. So that's another skill set. Those don't require as much shrinking, they're more a little bit of stretching. A lot of them are low crown panels. All right, so we still got a little bit in here, so we'll hit that again. Wipe off the dust. By far the most beautiful cars are the 30s and the 50s and some of the 60s cars. There are exceptions. I grew up with the 30s cars that we do. Mostly what we did at my grandfather's was 30s Packards, Duesenbergs, Rolls Royces, Bentleys, all that stuff. So my heart is entangled with that 30s design. In high school, my high school years were 65 to 69, and all the muscle cars were in vogue then. You know, I like them, but I like the 30s cars better. And then I discovered the 50s Jags and all the nice European 50s cars, which a lot of them were carryovers of the 30s design. In boldness of design, oftentimes the manufacturers did some really bold designs, but they had hundreds of millions of dollars to develop a car, where a lot of these smaller European companies only had a small workforce and 1 or 2 or 5 coach builders that they were working with to come up with the designs that they had. Once you get proficient in aluminum, you will never make a car body out of steel again. Aluminum is magical for car bodies. It's lightweight. Once you see the weight of an aluminum panel versus a steel panel, and the strength can be there. We made these here. I made these the other day. These are 90 thou. They got a little compound to them. These things are absolutely bulletproof, and they weren't that hard to make either. These are little plexiglass covers for the headlights, just to mock up. Super strong. So this is 065. You can use, I have a friend who builds second generation Cobras out of 080 aluminum. And I can see why he would do that. It's easier to weld, and it's a little more work forming it, but it's not the end of the world. He just uses an English wheel. So you see a lot of wheel marks and stuff. We're going to get those all out. We're still in the, we're just getting to the point where we're going to refine the panel now. We still got a few little spots where it's loose. A little loose here, a little loose up there, a little loose here. So one more time. A lot of handmade cars were handmade on wood bucks, and that's where a lot of confusion comes in, is that the wood bucks weren't station bucks. They were solid hardwood hammer form bucks, and they made them like that because they knew they were going to do multiple production, and they were able to hammer form on them. You can anneal the piece of aluminum and easily hammer form on them. especially these complicated reverse curve valleys and stuff. Makes it really easy and quick. And then after you hammer form, then you go into the English wheel and you smooth it all out. A lot of English cars were made that way. The Cobras were made that way, and a lot of Ferraris were made that way, some Maseratis. A lot of Italian coach builders used that technique. A lot of Italian coach builders also used wire forms. So if you really want to know a lot about coach building, you have to look at the big picture and see what other people did around the world. There's a great lesson there. All the different techniques that were used, and see what their results were. The most important thing when building a car is the design. The design has to be well thought out. You just don't jump into building a car unless you have a really good design. And that's a difficult skill set to learn, how to make a good design. But it can be done. We turn the camera, Eric's on the camera now. We can see Ed's Alfa Romeo. Ed had absolutely no skill sets for designing an automobile, and that was his first attempt, and it's an extraordinarily well done design. He looked at what they were doing in the 50s, mid 50s, and he executed as good as it possibly can. I had a Nissan car designer. He had 23 years of experience. He went to Art Center. He looked at Ed's design, and he was just blown away how good Ed did. So Ed was a medical doctor. No skills in designing cars other than taking on the challenge of doing it. And he wasn't afraid to fail. That's the important thing, is not to be afraid of that you might not achieve what you're hoping to do. And Ed did it. I mean, it's just a really good design. So let's see what we got now. We go back to our homes. All right, that's getting really tight now. And you'll see here, it's actually loose on the edge. That is a giveaway that I've overdeveloped it right here. That's a really small overdevelopment, not a problem. Well, actually, if I put it on the homes, it's not bad. I didn't have that. When I put it over here, it was overdeveloped. When I put it back on the home, I'm fine. So that filled out really nice. Take my gloves off. Feel what this feels like. What you look for is a little bit of bounce. There's a little bit of bounce over in here, a little bit here, and there's still some right here. So I'm going to pick these off one at a time. I'll go after this one first, right there. Put a little more area value right in there. I think there was a little bit over here, and then a little bit over here. So that's better. I got a little spot right there. Let's go after that one right there. You can take your finger. There's usually a little oil on your finger, or a little abrasive, and make a little mark. You don't have to put magic marker lines on it. See what that did? Still a little bit right there, close to where we were. Now, this could be a motorcycle gas tank. Similar, very similar, half of a motorcycle gas tank. And there's still a little bit right there. Right there, there's the epicenter of it, right where my thumb is. Try that. Sometimes it's only 4 or 5 passes under the wheel and you'll get the results you want. When you get subtle like this now, yeah, that tightened up. All right, I got a little spot here now. See, it jump around sometimes too, so it's a little loose right in here. So it's next door neighbor is telling me I need a little extra right there. Try that. Let's get nice and tight. And right here is all loose right in here. So get that puffed up and you can run your hand in there. You can see the horizon view. There's a little low right in here. So feel with your hand, watch for the lows and chase those lows out. And they come up really fast. A little low right there. See what that says. Still a little low right in there. Right in that center section there. Pump that up. Needs a general pump. Huh?
Story of my life.
Oh. All right, that tightened up pretty nice. Maybe a little bit right in here. That's all good. A little bit over here. But I'm going to change the wheel out because I don't need that higher crown wheel on this end of the panel, just on this end. So I'm going to first, I'll smooth this a little better. Then I'll take the lower crown medium wheel and get this in. And then we're just about where we need to be. So I'm going to loosen the pressure now and give this a once over here. as we do closely spaced wheels here, tracking. I give a shout out to my friend Steve Shepard and his wife Allie. They just got married yesterday. They're down, I think, in the Caribbean somewhere. I think they were going to get married this summer, but they had the itch, I guess, and went off to the Caribbean. Steve took my class years ago and became a hammer guy. I like to kid him all the time. He kids me too. But he made a wonderful choice. Allie is such a beautiful girl, and they're a great match. They got a beautiful home. Steve is as good as it gets when you're doing shaping. He's just a young guy too. And we can loosen this up a little bit more. You can see that nice chrome plate finish.
Wheeling, 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 keep them babies rolling. ProShaper.
All right, now we're going to change the wheel out. We got a nice smooth surface there now. We'll double check it for the fit, but first we're going to get this blended in nicely. And we're really close.
Oh, that was perfect.
So we got the lower crown wheel in there now. I call it my workhorse wheel. And we're just gonna smooth this baby all out. I can only go so far over here, and then I will start hitting and getting bottom wheel bite. You'll feel the resistance. So I can only go that far or so. Now I might be able to turn it 90 degrees and get that end with this wheel as well. Try that. No, I can feel it biting, so I won't be able to do that. I'll go back to the other wheel and hit that one more time. Let's see what the flexible shape pattern says here. We homed it on. That's fitting nice and tight here. All good. We're a little bit loose over in here. So I got to get that other wheel on here and pump that up a little bit over in here. So we do the horizon view, real important to see if there's any anomalies in that flow. I don't see anything that's really bad. Looks pretty good. So let's change that wheel out once more. Now, so far, the elapsed time that we have actually working this panel is about 2 hours. Now, it loosened up over here, so where am I? We gotta tighten it up a little bit more on the back here. It loosened up, I guess. But we still got something here that showed up. When we evened it all out with the fine wheeling, then all these little averages come out and it'll loosen up a little bit. So we got to chase it a little bit. Now, it is getting a little late. The panel is very close. Just for giggles, let's bring it over to the car and see how it fits on the car. So this needs this peak here, which is an arrangement deal like this. Popping that peak in. And I'm just putting it in by eye right now. But there you go. How's that? I'd say that's a pretty good preliminary fit. We have probably another hour of work to get this to fit the pattern just perfect. Then we're going to tip this edge. First we'll trim it, tip this edge, and then we'll have to, this is where you'll use the shrinker, and we'll show this operation too. That'll be next week. We'll tip the edge, and then we'll have to use the kick shrinker to pull that down to make that, we'll put the peak line in with the tipping wheel, and then pull that down with the shrinker. So I got a little more refinement of the panel to do. Put that line in with the tipping wheel, and I'll do a rough trim. It still won't be a final trim. We'll still have a little cheat room, and the panel looks pretty good. Get that tip line in, we shrink that down, and it should fit right on there perfect. All right, thanks for watching, hanging in there. We did a long video tonight, but we got a lot accomplished. We've got to refine the panel a little bit more. We've got these details to be added. And I forgot to tell everybody to please remember to subscribe, give us the comments, give us the likes, and hit that notification bell. Tell all your friends. We're trying to grow the channel. We're almost up to, I think, 44,000 subscribers or so. We want to get to, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 million. So we still got a long way to go. So please help out whatever way you can that way. And this panel will be as good as it gets in the next installment. So we're going to be adding those details. We're going to refine it, and it'll be an eye popper. As you can see, it's as good as it gets. And anybody on this planet that wants to learn this craft, you don't need a ton of tools. You just need the right techniques. Techniques are more valuable, more important than the tools. Everybody goes for the tools. But believe me, we didn't do much in tools tonight. I have my big giant English wheel, which actually was all made from scrap metal. So you can go to your scrap yard and grab a bunch of metal and make one yourself too. But you know, you need a lathe and a mill and all that stuff to do it, and all the skill sets to run it. So thanks for watching. It's Ray from ProShaper Workshop. Metal is clay. Keep making my day.